channel, or hello if you're new. My name is Danny and I am bringing to you a different sort of video for me. I have recently got into the Women's Prize for Fiction, so I have decided to come up with my long list of the 16 books. Some of them I feel are quite strong contenders, some of them I don't think have a chance, but this is my list of what books I think are going to be longlisted. So the Women's Prize for Fiction, the 16 get announced, I think it's in about 3 weeks time. I want to say the 7th of March, but I could be wrong. And there's the two, what's the word? The two things that these books have to have. They have to be written by women and they have to have been published between the 1st of April 2022 and the 31st of March 2023. So some of these books will not even have been released when the nominations go out. So I'm just going to dive right in with the books that I think have a good shot of being longlisted, and you can tell me in the comments if you agree or if you think I am way off the mark, which is quite likely. So my first choice, and I think is a really good shout, is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I do actually have the book, but can I find the book? No, I cannot. I have not read it. Surprise. This one, if you Google it, Mr. Google tells you 29th of March that got released last year. But when you actually go on to like Penguin, Amazon, and I went on the author's Instagram, they all say 4th of April it got released, so we're going with that. So this has actually, Bonnie Garmus won Waterstone's Author of the Year, and this book was also shortlisted for their debut fiction prize. So a lot of hype surrounding this book. I've heard nothing but good things about it. It's about a woman called Elizabeth Zott, and basically I think it's what it's like to be a woman in the 1960s where there's zero equality. She's a scientist working in an environment that's full of men who do not have the same view that women are equal. So right off the bat I'm in with that story. And then she meets this, I think it's a scientist called Calvin Evans, and he is a Nobel Prize nominee, and they fall in love. And then it takes you further down the timeline, I think, where she is now a single mother and she's working on this famous cooking show, but she's not just cooking, she's also trying to change the status quo of how women are viewed and how women view themselves, and not everyone is happy about that. So I think it's just going to be a very good feminist novel, and I am here for it. Number 2 on my nominations is The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty, and this has already won quite a few prizes or has been nominated for a few prizes, so I definitely feel that is in with a good shout. It has won or been nominated for the following. I have written notes, which is why I'm looking down. It's winner of the Waterstones Debut Prize for Fiction, winner of the National Book Award for Fiction 2022, finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, a Waterstones Book of the Year for 2022, and winner of the Barnes & Noble's Discover Prize, and also an Oprah Daily Book of the Year 2022. So this book is set over a week in July and it ends in this bizarre act of violence. It follows the life of, I think from when I read the synopsis, 4 different characters, and they live in this low cost housing complex in America, and I think they call it the Rabbit Hutch. So it just follows these people and how this act of violence and this week has an effect on them. So yeah, here for that. Then I do own quite a few of these books. We have Wayward by Amelia Hart, and this is actually my most anticipated release of the year, hence I have the Waterstones edition of it. So this has also had a lot of hype surrounding it. It's 3 different timelines, 3 different women, so it follows Kate in 2019, Violet in 1942 and Altha in 1619. And as soon as I heard that this book involved witch trials, I was sold for it. It's described as weaving together the stories of 3 women across 5 centuries. Wayward is an enthralling novel of female resilience and the transformative power of the natural world. And I mean, if that doesn't sound like a good book, I do not know what does. So that is also on my list. Then next on my list I also own is Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. This was actually longlisted for the Booker Prize 2022, and this book to me sounds phenomenal and right up my street. And the fact that Layla Motley wrote this when she was 17 is amazing. That it's, and imagine having a book that you've written when you're 17 nominated for the Booker Prize. Amazing. But this follows a young black girl called Kira who is 17, and she has to resort to desperate measures to keep a roof over her head for herself, and I think it's also her little brother who's 9 years old when their mum has to go to rehab. So she's having to deal with that, and then these two corrupt police officers offer her, I think probably a disgusting deal in exchange for her freedom. And then I think there's like a court case and everything. It has a lot of media storm about it. So I just think it's going to be a very important story to see what it's like in some places in America to be a young black girl trying to get by in life. So I think that's going to be a very important book, and I think it has a very good chance. Next on my list is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsliver. Again, I have one of her books. I have the Poisonwood Bible on my Kindle. Have not read it yet. I will get to it eventually. But she's actually a previous Women's Prize for Fiction winner. She won in 2010. So I feel like there's a good chance she might be longlisted. And this is actually a modern day telling of David Copperfield set in the southern Appalachian Mountains in Virginia. So even the premise of the setting where this book is set sounds very interesting, and it's about a young boy called Damon and about how he grows up in poverty in these Appalachian mountains and how it has an effect on him. So yep. Next I have went for another previous winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction, and that is Maggie O'Farrell and The Marriage Portrait. I have read Hamnet, and Hamnet is, which is what she won the last prize for, one of my favourite books of all time. Have I read this? Of course I've not, but it's high on my list of books to read, and I just absolutely love Maggie O'Farrell's writing style. So this is based on the Deity family, and I quite enjoy that family. Like, they were quite a powerful family, so I'm looking forward to reading about maybe one of the lesser known daughters, because I've heard of Cosmos, or whatever his name is. It's his daughter that this is based on. So basically it's the third daughter, Cosmos' third daughter, Lucrezia. I'm so sorry if I pronounce words wrong. Lucrezia, and her sister is due to marry this duke, and her sister dies on the eve of her wedding, so she has to then marry him, and he is not the nicest of people. And basically her main duty, as it was back in whenever this is set, was to produce an heir. So that is basically what this book is about, how I assume how she overcomes having a tyrant of a husband, because he sounds not very nice. Talking about nasty husbands, my next nomination is Claytonestra by Constanza Casati. Constanza Casati. Right, got it. And this is actually another one of my anticipated releases. I've not read any books, I think, set in ancient Greece, but I do own many. So I need to get on reading these. But this is the story of Clytemnestra, and I think she's known for being a bit of a badass in Greek mythology. She is the twin sister of Helen of Troy, and she is married to an absolute tyrant of a man. Her husband sacrifices their children to the gods, so that is the character of the man she is married to. This has been described as a blazing novel set in the world of ancient Greece and told through the eyes of the greatest heroine. This is a thrilling tale of power, prophecies, hatred, love, and of an unforgettable queen who fiercely dealt out death to those who wronged her. I mean, you wouldn't want to get on her bad side, would you? Then, a book I have actually read, and it is Babel or Babel. People pronounce it different ways. I pronounce it Babel because it's based on the Tower of Babel in the Bible, so that's what I go with. But I have the gorgeous Fairyloot edition. It's just beautiful. And yeah, I have read this. Did I say it was by R.F. Quan? It's by R.F. Quan. So this is based around language, and most importantly the translation of languages, and it's about a young boy called Robin Swift, and he is, when his mother dies, he's living in Canton in China. When his mum dies, he's taken to England by this professor who is his benefactor, Professor Lovell, and he raises him so that he can go to this. He died. Yes, so this professor raises Robin so that he can go to this infamous Babel school, which is set in Oxford, and become a translator. But it's got some like magical elements to it, and it's one of these books that I'm like, if you haven't read it, please read it, because it's not my normal sort of book, and I wasn't sure if I'd love it, but I absolutely loved it. It was 5 stars all the way. So if you haven't tried it, then please give it a go. Then my next choice is A Spell of Good Things by, and I'm really going to murder this person's name and I'm so sorry, Ayobami Adebayo. Maybe I didn't do that too bad. So this author has actually been shortlisted before, so that's how this book was on my radar. And it's set in Nigeria, 2 different families from 2 very different backgrounds. So one's wealthy, one is living in poverty, and it's described as 2 families that get caught up in the riptides of wealth, power, romantic obsession and political corruption. So I am very interested in books that are set in Africa, because that is my background. My dad is from Ghana, so I get really interested in books that are set in that time period. So time period? No, in Africa, not time period. So yeah, this is another one that I, fingers crossed, is on the long list so I can read it. Then we have Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow, and this is another one that's been shortlisted for Waterstone's debut fiction prize. So a few of these books are debuts from people, and this sounds like another book that's right up my street, about a woman called Miriam who escapes a really abusive marriage. She goes with her 2 children to Memphis and to the home that her dad had built back in the 40s, and she learns about her family's past and the strong women that are in her past. So it sounds like another interesting book with strong female leads and women overcoming adversities, and it sounds like another Danny book. Then we've got Things of Deity by Kate Atkinson. I've never actually read any of her books, but I have heard so many good things about them. So this particular book is set right after the Great War, during the Roaring Twenties, and I think what it does is focuses on the nightlife, and in particular a woman called Nellie who has built this sort of empire. I'm assuming it's a club. It doesn't actually say in the synopsis if it's a club, but I get the feeling because it's nightlife it's going to be a club of some sort. But it deals with the threats that this empire has to deal with and faces. So another one, fingers crossed. Then we have another book that I own. This is the last of the books, Joan by Catherine J. Chen, and this is the story of Joan of Arc but it is described as a feminist retelling of Joan of Arc. When I was looking up the synopsis for this, it was described as a thrilling, epic, triumph of historical fiction, feminist celebration of one remarkable and remarkably real woman who left an indelible mark on history. There we go, got it in the end. It just says on the back, girl, warrior, heretic, saint. So this is high on my list actually to read, and I keep saying this, but please be on the long list so that I have an excuse to read it. I mean, I have an excuse to read it, I own it, but a definite reason for me to read it. Then we have The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn. This is yet another debut to feature on this list, and this is about an author called Christabel and involves a whale being washed up on the beach near the house where her step-parents, I think they described her as step-parents, but I assume they maybe adopt her, but they are distracted by their lifestyle and these parties that they have, and it's about these siblings, so her and her siblings coming together. They create their own education through reading together, they eavesdrop on conversations that they hear, and it also says that they get some education from their maid. And I also like the sound of this because it follows the children from being children and it follows them into adulthood, so I assume it's about how this affects them when they go into adulthood. Next on my list is Take My Hand by Dolene Perkins Valdez. Yet another book that Danny owns but has not read. I own this on my Kindle. Actually, I own The Whalebone Theatre on my Kindle as well. So if these are on, I'm sorted. This book sounds incredible and sounds, if there was ever a Danny book, this is it. This is set in Alabama in 1973 about a nurse called Sybil, and she works for a family planning clinic, and she wants women to be able to make their own decisions about their own lives and their own bodies. So straight off the bat I'm like, yep, go. And then on her first week she discovers that her new patients are only 11 and 13 years old, and then the synopsis says, but one day she arrives at their door to discover the unthinkable has happened and nothing will ever be the same. So that has intrigued me because I do not want to know what the unthinkable thing is that's happened before I go into reading this book, because I think that would ruin it, and I'm just, yes, very excited to read that book. So I keep saying this, please be on the long list. Then I have one that I think is not going to be on here, but I needed 16 books, so I added it on, and that is Godmersham Park by Jill Hornby. I mean, this is my kind of book, but I'm not sure it's going to be on the short list, but we will see. And this is set in 1804 about a woman called Anne Sharp. I think she's 31, so considered quite old, and probably a spinster in that time because she's not married, but she comes to this Godmersham Park to become a governess for the 12-year-old Fanny Austen there. And then while she's there, this Henry Austen and his sister come to stay, and they are both quite interested in Anne, and I think the feeling is mutual. She is also very interested in them, so interesting to see where that story goes. And then the last on my list is The Attic Child by Lola Jane. This has come up a few times on my recommendation list just with books I've been adding onto my wish list. This one came up. So I think it's dual timeline. The first is set in 1907 about a boy named Celestine. It looks like Celestine, and he spends most of his time in this attic. He's been taken from his home in Africa, and he is basically being used as an unpaid slave. And then decades later, a young girl finds herself banished to this same attic, but she finds these artifacts, and it says that they bring her not only comfort, but will make her believe that she's not the first child to be imprisoned in this attic. So that's my list. My books that I think or want to be on the long list. So we will see what happens in March, and I'm so excited to see what's on the long list, because it's a way for me to discover new books and new authors to read. So I'm very, very excited. But thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel. I am restarting again after having quite a few subscribers, and then I one day decided to delete my channel. So I'm back. So if you would like to subscribe, then please do. But thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye bye.